Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short, and it's Let's Talk. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite personal video game soundtracks, pieces of music, and as to why they resonate with us. It'll be a reoccurring talk, but we're going to punctuate each video with 3 each. Some you will be hearing for the first time, some that you might be hearing for the first time, and really digging into the more personal side of it than anything else, talking about why it connects to you and what it means to you more than what the actual song is, if that makes sense. You can appreciate the detail and the instruments, but really I kind of want to break into the whole, well, what does it do for you? Why did it hit you in the feelings, or why do it make you feel this way, and so on. We've chosen 3 each. We're going to go back and forth 1 each, talking it through from both our perspectives. And I think we'll start with me, because I kind of want to get this one out of the way to a degree, only because we talked a lot about it in the video game Track by Track, Thomas Was Alone. But one of the ones I want to talk about is Freedom, the track Freedom from the Thomas Was Alone soundtrack. The last actual track from the main soundtrack, excluding the DLC. So look, this is important for me to mention as to why this one more than any other Thomas Was Alone piece of music. Obviously, the whole soundtrack I think is amazing, but Freedom exemplifies Thomas Was Alone for me. In particular, and I have to talk about spoilers, in Thomas Was Alone, there is a point where, of course, you have to end Thomas and your gang's life, end their existence. And it comes about 2 chapters before the end of the game. It was such a shocking moment for me. Broke my heart that I'd fallen in love with these isometric shapes and enjoyed the game so much. And when it got to this point and I realized what I needed to do, even if it was for a good reason, I will never forget that I had to put my controller down and walk away and take a moment, because I just couldn't face doing it. I'd never experienced that level of like impact in a game. When I eventually settled down to do it, and obviously the game continued, I felt a certain level of detachment in the last 2 chapters, and that I couldn't quite understand why the game was going in this direction, as it introduced new characters who were imbued with the powers created by Thomas and friends. But as I played on, I started to understand it, and Freedom was the track that exemplified what it meant, and me finally understanding that Thomas and them were the creators, and they were the catalyst for change and the breakout that would be unstoppable, and that these new people weren't necessarily the important characters anymore, but the freedom that was coming from what Thomas's sacrifice had done was what was important. And I think Freedom nails that wonderfully. It created a level of emotion that when I listen to it and hear it back and realize that trying to stop Mr. Grey isn't about just trying to stop some random villain they throw into the game, but it's trying to stop the idea with free will becomes villainy alongside good and hope and stuff like that, and what that meant, and that it's freedom for the AI, but it's freedom for Thomas, and it's freedom for everyone else in that game. It exemplifies that in a way that touches me now. It's still one of my favorite pieces of music ever. That's Thomas Was Alone, Freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know how much you love the game. So, and when we did the track by track, that was my first time in a long time going back to listening to all the music. And before listening to it, I didn't have the appreciation for the music that you have. But then when we did it, I realized why you love it so much, because there's a lot of really strong pieces of music in there. And as I mentioned in the track by track for Freedom, I think the piece of music, it really combines a lot of the elements of the other tracks in the game wonderfully into this one piece of music. There's a lot of heavy piano notes in it that stand out to me as a huge highlight, and then everything comes together beautifully, and it's elevated further by the symbolism of what it all stands for in terms of what takes place in the game. And yeah, when we did the track by track, I named it as my favorite track on the soundtrack, and it's great. Yeah,
it is indeed. Okay, throw out one of yours then, and explain yourself.
Okay, as I mentioned in the message we had between us when you asked about doing this, I threw out some more unconventional ones, which maybe don't get highlighted as often, or I've never really discussed. to anybody but myself, because these tracks I've chosen are not the more obvious ones that I might throw out there, because I've already discussed soundtracks on other videos before.
Yeah.
There's more obvious ones that you would expect me to do, but the first one I'm going to go for is from a video game called My Friend Pedro, and it's called Low Life on the Highway. And if you haven't heard of the game, I'll do a really quick description of what it's about. My Friend Pedro is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up game with a heavy emphasis on bullet time. Your goal is to make it from A to Z as seamlessly as possible as you possibly can, killing enemies and overcoming obstacles in the hopes of obtaining the highest score. This is the first of two Devolver Digital published games that I'm going to talk about. If you know anything about them, then you'll know that a lot of the games that they make are a bit more unconventional, eccentric, and experimental. So it's basically that sort of thing. The whole soundtrack for the game, on the whole, works immensely well and goes hand in hand with the gameplay so well. I saw the game described by someone as a ballet of violence, and I don't think I could say any better than that, really. It combines platforming aspects, bullet time, like I said, and this music. It's a great package. There are a few tracks I'm going to highlight, but this one stands out for me by far. It's adrenaline pumping awesomeness. It plays during a level in which you're riding a motorcycle and you have to contend with shooting other bikes and cars. It's super epic stuff. The game isn't a masterpiece or anything. I'm not going to pretend it is. It's a good game. I believe I gave it a 7 out of 10 on the official site review. But the track itself, I just love the pacing. It literally gets my heart and blood pumping with this beat. The combination of everything that is going on, it blows me away every time I hear it. I think it's that special. The soundtrack to this game makes amazing running music as well if you're into exercising. And that's it.
So obviously the chance of always having played these games is possible, but here we don't quite have that. I have started my friend Pedro, but I think I only played the first level before I kind of went, oh, I'll come back to that in the future, and then I just didn't. So I don't have the familiarity. So when it comes to me talking about this track, Low Life on the Highway, I did it on the basis of, okay, let's listen to this piece of music and then see how it makes you feel. So at first, I really wasn't too sure about this, but this is a banger. The heavy industrial groove is energizing. The beat is so catchy. And then the synth enters and it becomes so impressive. Layers of instruments. It makes me want to move. It's got old school vibes, but utilizing all these modern instruments. And I love that it has a chorus without needing vocals to lead you there. Look out for some darker tones that come from the choral vocals. It's a really nice touch. But the word energy and, like I said, the ability to make you move, that's what I took from this. And the fact that you're kind of saying, and you just said it's in a motorcycle level, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, okay, I get it.
Yeah, I think like just hearing it isolated by itself, maybe you don't entirely get it, but if you see the scene that it plays in and you play the level and stuff like that, it really stands out for me. But there are a few other tracks on it, the whole soundtrack that have similar vibe to it. It's not it's an odd one because it's not like the type of music that I would normally listen to or enjoy, but I'm a massive whore for synthwave music, so it just hits all the right notes for that for me. And yeah, it's one that I never get tired of listening to. I listen to it all the time.
Of course, context is always going to be massively important, and particularly in regards to how it makes you feel. But that's going to be the fun thing about doing these Let's Talk About music pieces, game pieces, because there isn't always going to have that. And in fact, I don't want it in certain circumstances, because I want you to hear something potentially, or me hear something and go, well, what do I get from it compared to what you get from it? And see if it kind of matches up to a certain degree. It's not going to be possible because there will be pieces of music that you will inevitably be familiar with. Which brings me to my next one, which I think likely you are familiar with, but it's a different choice from the series. And that is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. So the PS1 game. And I am talking about its credit roll, its end credits pieces of music. Chosen because, well, here's the thing about Resident Evil series early, up until I'd say 4. Yeah, 4 is where I might drop it. No, Code Veronica as well. Code Veronica's a banger one. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, 4, Code Veronica, and the Resident Evil remake have incredible end credit songs. From Resident Evil 1's hilariously over-the-top rocking out with guitars, to Resident Evil 2's variation, one that was heavy on guitars and metal, one that was mournful and sorrowful, to Resident Evil 4's actual end credits called Sorrow, to Veronica's version and the remake's version. But my favorite one comes from Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and it is almost all completely piano, although there is a guitar there layered amongst it as well. It's no secret that a piano is one of my favorite instruments in the entire world. And I love that Nemesis, which is really one of the more forgettable Resident Evil games, has this brilliantly dramatic piano, heavy on the keys outro. It really, really touches me. It's really addictive music. Its melody is fantastic. And like I said, you've got this guitar that kind of plays along with it, right layered deep into the background of it. I just love it. I love it. I'm such a sucker for the Resident Evil soundtracks up until 5 for the most part. But man, this early ones, they were nailing these end credits. I don't know who was in charge of this shit, but they were killing it.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided to go so hard in the end credits, but they certainly did. I think this is a good example that really highlights that we are clear lovers of soundtracks in video games, because I'm not sure people that play everyone that plays Resident Evil, or the majority, really associate great music with Resident Evil. I think that's something that only if you really are into video game soundtracks that maybe you get from it. I don't think if you're ask the average person what do they love about Resident Evil, I don't think the music is one that would jump out of them.
Indeed.
Well, that certainly is for me. If you ask, if someone asked me that question, the music would actually be up quite high there for me. But yeah, crazy high quality for end credit music. It's so uplifting and calming to hear after the long battle of Nemesis. Yeah, it's just so something comforting about it, giving you the sense that everything is going to be all right from here on out. As we know how it goes in the Resident Evil series, that's not the case. But at least in that moment, it's a brief window of calmness and comfort, and it's really, really nice for that.
Yeah, because the next time we'd see Jill Valentine in a main Resident Evil game should be possessed by the thing on her chest in Resident Evil 5.
Chest spider thing.
Indeed. Okay, what are you going to choose from the other two then?
Okay. I will just jump straight into the next Devolver Digital game, which is a game called Ruiner. The track is called The End. And I chose these two tracks one after another, not just because I think they're amazing pieces of music, but also because I think these two games are incredibly underrated, but none more so than this game, Ruiner. I'll just give a brief description quickly on what the game is, similar to my friend Pedro. The game is a twin-stick shooter with an isometric perspective, and Ruiner immediately grabbed my attention with its depressingly beautiful cybernetic aesthetic. The gameplay is swift, savagely violent, and very satisfying. It all feels like the most perfect combination of Blade Runner, Terminator, and a dark anime all blended into one. The soundtrack suits the industrial, cybernetic vibe of the game so damn well. There was a hell of a lot of atmospheric pieces of music in this game, but I went with this one. The track has genuinely become one of my all-time favorites. It kicks in during a very epic segment near the end of the game that is laced in tragedy and futility with everything that is going on in the story. It truly captures the hopelessness of the situation, but the desire to fight for what is right regardless. It starts off so slowly, but when it kicks into high gear, it fills me with so much adrenaline. If you focus on the undertones of this track, you'll appreciate it even more. Again, as I mentioned, I absolutely adore synthwave, so this hits all the right notes for me. What else can I say?
You can, yeah. So this is an interesting one for me. It's because while I have heard of the game, I've never played it, but I am also a big fan of synth. So of course that was going to be a draw. Now, weirdly, it took multiple listens for this one to really connect to me, to take me over. Initially, I was drawn to the melody, but on multiple listens, I started to pick much more up. It has got a prettiness and some serious emotional value that I found myself connected to without ever having played the game. I immediately understood that this was probably an important, powerful moment, particularly as it goes on, while keeping that main melody at the forefront. To be honest, it started to sound downright epic to me, and I ended up loving this. I actually ended up replaying this one over and over again, like at least 10 times, just to really get it in. And it's enough so that it's now on my list of, right, I need to play this game because I need to understand where this music actually comes from. It generally is one of those growers that really, really affected me because I love the style of music it plays, and I connected to the emotional value without actually understanding where that comes from.
Yeah, and if you play the game and you play the scene that it plays in, you'll definitely appreciate it even more. And I agree on it being a grower, and it's even better listening to this with headphones on and really loud. You really do appreciate some of the undertone moments throughout the track. But yeah, I'd highly recommend Runa. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10 on the start review, and it's dripping in atmosphere. Like I said, that game it is, but it's a mix of so many different things. But it just, again, lots of different tracks on it are also really good. So if you like a good video game soundtrack, I recommend it. Yeah.
Okay, well, my second one, last one, should I say? Sorry, the last one is a game that I thoroughly recommend. In fact, I've been recommending people for years. This is the mobile slash Steam PC game Little Inferno. Basically, one of my all-time favorite games. Came out of nowhere. Started playing it on my phone because, hey, that looks like it'd be fun. Combine things and burn them in a fireplace. Yeah, that's just a way to lose some time. And what I found was a deep, meaningful, shocking game experience that still blows my mind and has me telling people, play it. You have no idea what you're in for. I'm not gonna. I have no choice but to touch around some spoilers here. But Little Inferno is a game that starts off simply and then reveals probably one of the darker, more twisted stories about end of the world, loss of hope, and stuff like that I'd ever experienced. All done through a very simplistic gameplay style that flips on its end by eventually, after you blow up your own house and escape into the city, go to visit and confront the creator of the fireplaces, the Little Inferno fireplaces, Miss Nancy, who has talked to you through the game through letters and stuff like that. The soundtrack across this is incredible. The walk through the city at the end of the game and seeing people freezing, the family freezing to death on the corner, and the realization that we're in an ice age, and that's why the Inferno, it still blows me away, particularly as it's always done with a tongue-in-cheek sense as well. I ummed and ahed about doing Open the Gates as the soundtrack, which comes when you demand to have the gates open, and it does this epic introduction because part of that music rolls into this one. But I chose Miss Nancy Remembers, which is, of course, plays when Miss Nancy leaves in the rocket and on what I believe is a heroic mission to save the world, which implies at the end she may have done it in a similar Sunshine style way. And as she leaves in the rocket and you stand and watch her leave in it, it does, this music plays out, and it is fucking epic because as well, visually, you stand by the window with your hands pressed up against it as the rocket goes up. And even as the propulsion hits the window, it fills the room with light. And then you get this soft piece of melody that just drifts away as you're kind of left to walk out, going, well, what now? What now? And of course, the game ends shortly afterwards with no spoilers there as to what actually happens. But I was gobsmacked. Up to this point, I was gobsmacked by how deep and meaningful and important this entire experience was. But ending it in this way and having this Miss Nancy, and oh, by the way, people, as the urge if you play it, don't burn the fucking coupon at the start. I know it's tempting, particularly for the space, but you get an extra little scene if you keep that coupon to the very end and give it back to Miss Nancy. So don't make sure you do that, just because you got to do everything. But yeah, Miss Nancy Remembers. This is Little Inferno. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I want this soundtrack on vinyl. Please, somebody give it to me. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I played about half of this game a few years ago, but then I've still got it on my phone and I'm always like, I got to go back to finish it because you're always raving about how good it is and stuff, but I just haven't managed to get around to doing it. But so all that stuff I ain't even got anywhere near to come with some of the stuff you just mentioned, which sounds insane. But
Yeah.
it does make me want to go and check it out even more because it does sound like it, because it kind of got to the point where I was just burning stuff in the fireplace and it was kind of getting dragging a little bit there, and then it goes even beyond that. That sounds like really interesting to me. But so this is one of the cases of hearing a piece of music and not having the association with it that you have. So but when I listened to this track, it was genuinely the first time I've heard it, like I said, and that's a shame because while I do think it is quite short, it is a beautiful piece of music. There's a sense of grandness to it when it really hits that crescendo with the violins and then slowly fades out really nicely. It was a really nice piece of music. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. I was wondering, God, has he played it? Has he got to this? Will he recognize it and so on? So it's interesting to hear your opinion to a piece of music. That's one of my alarm clocks. It's one of my alarms.
It's an interesting way to wake up.
Yes, indeed. Okay, your last one.
Okay, my final one is for a game called Spiritfarer, and I'll just quickly mention that all three of these games I played through Game Pass. I don't believe any of them are on there now, but they came to at one point or another, so I managed to play them through that. So thanks Game Pass because it led me to experiencing these games.
We don't need to give Microsoft sponsorship here. No.
Not sponsored by them or anything, but
We
I think
wish.
that is why I do love Game Pass, because there's games like this that I probably never would have even seen or experienced, and I see it on there, I just easily install it, and then I experience some of my favorite games like this one, Spiritfarer. So I'll quickly touch on what it is about. Spiritfarer is a management sim and sandbox adventure game. The player takes the role of a character named Stella, and you're accompanied by her adorable pet cat Daffodil. Stella takes over from the mythological Charon as the new Spiritfarer, a ferry master who must sail the sea to find spirits and grant their last wishes, and finally take them to the Everdoor, a gateway to the afterlife. Stella procures a ship of her own and begins traveling the world. She picks up spirits and helps them to fulfill their last wishes while befriending them along the way. As she picks up more spirits and collects resources, Stella expands the ship and its capabilities further. However, Stella must begin sending the spirits to the Everdoor, with each of them giving an emotional send-off as they thank Stella for everything she has done for them. You spend the vast majority of your time gathering resources, growing things, crafting supplies. That's really the meat and bones of the game. There are a bunch of fun mini games that you'll need to play in order to obtain some of the more rare materials. Also, as you progress, Stella gains new abilities. For me, the story and its characters is truly the biggest strength of this game. You'll find yourself getting hopelessly bonded to each new spirit that you welcome aboard. You'll fully get to know everything about who they were in their life. You can do small tasks to make their stay more enjoyable, like cooking their favorite meals. Each of them brings a different personality and story that are different enough to make them all stand out as individuals. Taking some of them to the Everdoor felt like I myself had experienced genuine loss. Now, I say all this because it helps add context to the piece of music that plays when you take each spirit to the Everdoor.
Yeah,
it's so beautifully done. Yeah, it's so beautifully done. I'm pretty sure it touched my soul. This game says a lot about life, death, and what it means to have existed at all. It's a truly stunning experience, and I think this music encapsulates all of that perfectly. There you go.
I knew it. I knew this. Right. So Spiritfarer, I haven't played it, but it actually is a game I own. It's sitting on my to be played games. It's just one of those because I know what it's about, and I'm like, okay, you don't want to just jump into this and play for half an hour. You kind of need to be ready to do this in one sitting. I'm aware of that, so that's why I've not touched it. So, and immediately upon hearing this, I suspected the experience of the game would give this piece more impact. But even without that, I can feel the emotional value that kind of exists in this track. It's light, it's airy, there's moodiness, but not uncomfortable moodiness. The drifting melody is something I can easily enjoy, having not played it, and the sense of being part of something important is strong. And you saying all of that and me picking up on that is where I'm like, what the fuck? The fact I got a sense that something important is going on here. You talk about life and death and moving on and stuff like that. Jesus. It is an emotional piece of music. I'll always love that. Even when I haven't played the game, I connect to that immediately. So on that front, I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm about to finish up at the time of recording. I'm about to finish up two or three games at once. Last little bits I need to do. I think I'm going to put this one as a priority and get it started on my day off on Tuesday and just get this going and sort of see, because that, what you've described and what I felt, feels like this is it's time. I need that push, and like I want to connect to this more, so I need to hear it in the context of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it once you have played it. See how you feel after you can like put the images that you've experienced in the game with the music. You do hear it quite a few times in the game as you take each spirit to the Ecuador, but it never loses that impact because it's such a powerful piece of music that accompanies just the themes of everything in the game. It's quite heavy stuff, as I mentioned, so the themes are quite serious and heavy, but yeah, it's just such a beautifully told story, and there's even a bit of a twist at the end of the game that even adds more like beauty and emotion to the whole thing. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it once you get around to playing it.
Well, for future then as well, it'll be a video game track by track once I've fully experienced the game as well then.
Awesome.
Right, so that's our 3 each. This will be continuing series. We'll come back to this and talk more. Let's talk more about individual tracks. I'm certainly going to come up with 3 more unique ones in future, bearing in mind what you did here. But for now, if you've got any thoughts on these particular tracks, you perhaps feel the same way, I have a different opinion, you know what to do. Let us know what you think in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?